If you really want to understand physics, you first have to understand spiritual physics, which means you first have to understand the nature of infinity. Now, if you don't believe in God, just call it like life force or the nature of infinity itself. For those of us who believe in God, it's really easy to call this God, because it would have to be alive and it would have to be infinite, and we have long been, taught what infinity is. The thing is that even though we've been taught that God is infinite, I don't think that we really grasp that the kind of infinity that it is a uniting of opposites. We all know that God is truth. And for you who are atheists, just take out the word God and use these as attributes, okay? I'm going to talk in terms of God because that's the easiest way to grasp what I'm going to say. Those of us who know that God exists, God is truth. Truth, though, in order to be truth, has to be complete. I mean, one thing we all know about lies is that the biggest lies that are told are really partial truths. So if truth is going to be truth, it's going to have to be complete. It's just like math. Okay? Math has to be complete or you don't have the answer. Or you have a dysfunctional answer. Now, what does it mean to say the truth is complete? It means high to low. Again, just like math. All the positive numbers, all the negative numbers. And in math, the negative numbers are considered non-real because, you don't see a negative number. There's no such thing as minus one apple. The apple has to be one minus one to be 0 apples. So you either see 1 apple or 0 apples, but you don't see a minus 1 apple. But in truth, you have such concepts as negative formulas, negative ideas, negative functions. So in math, in truth, because really they're two sides of the same coin. Math is the secular display of truth. In truth, you have a full spectrum, high to low, of relationships and variables. Okay, you take away one of those relationships and variables, and you're not looking at truth anymore, and you're not looking at sound math anymore. In other words, it has to be complete. So that's the paradox, is that if God is truth, and truth has to be both high and low, then that means that the full truth, the real truth, has got to include all the potential or real bad truths. Just like math has to include all potentialities as well as real ones, and it has to include formulas that are not pleasant as well as the ones that are. So here you are, if you're God and you're infinite and that your character is truth, which, Bible says it is, and so do most of the world's holy books. Okay, then by nature, you have this paradox, because the truth that's in you, all the negative truths, you're going to say, no, I'm not going to do those negative truths. They're still in you because they're potential. Just like math, not every math formula plays out. You got potential ones. And God can always sin, but won't. It's always a potential. All right? Omnipotence means God can do whatever he wants, including sin. I wish the Calvinists would get their heads around that. I can't stand it when people say God cannot sin. Sure he can. He won't. Okay? And just like you have negative numbers that aren't real, so you have this negative potential that isn't real. God will not sin, but he can. So in God there is this terrific set of paradoxes where you have all these negative truths, all these bad truths that God could utilize if he wanted, because it's part of his attributes. Just like I could kill somebody if I wanted to, but I won't. Same kind of idea. Okay, so when God goes to create, that if God is going to create and be true to truth, since he himself is truth, then whatever he creates is going to have to be free. If it's going to have to be free, then it's going to have to include the potential of sin, the potential of every kind of bad thing that is in truth. Otherwise, it's not true. Otherwise, the truth is being shaved. So, when God goes to create, he creates free creation. That's why we have sin. That's why we have all this bad stuff. Okay, so now you have the next paradox. The next paradox is, well, okay, if I'm going to let truth be truth free, which I must, or I'm not just, or I'm not truth, then a new injustice exists. In fact, Isaiah 45:7 talks about that. If I create free, well, then I'm in effect creating evil, because nobody has the say-so over its existence except me as God. All right, well, then that's unjust. So now you have this paradox. If I create, I'm unjust. If I don't create, I'm unjust. So what do? It's like a Hobson's choice. Okay, well, if I create and I choose to use my omnipotence to make good on all the negative truths, then the injustice becomes a vehicle for greater justice, and it's going to have to be way greater. I mean, look, if somebody punches you in the nose, then they owe you for that. You have to get compensated for that. If you're God and you're going to allow injustice to exist, basically ordain it by ordaining freedom, free creation, then damn it, you better get paid for that, because it's an offense to your own infinite righteousness, because that's another attribute of God. And again, atheists just say that it's an attribute. You don't have to call it God. All right. So that means that there is a juridical issue that arises the minute God decrees to create, and that decree actually is in Isaiah 52:13. He decrees to create Christ, Christ being the unity, the resolution, the compensation for all the injustice that's going to freely exist. And bear in mind, hell's going to exist forever, so we're talking about injustices which exist forever. So the compensation for that has to be good enough for God at God's level. Well, since God is infinitely righteous, whatever compensation compensates him way overcompensates us. And that's really why salvation is what it is. You just believe to be saved. It's not because you're a good person, and it's not like you get away with anything. It's because the evil is so bad. You know, you're talking about one guy who lies once in his lifetime versus a serial murderer, and you think, well, the serial murderer is worse. Yeah, and the serial murderer gets it. Okay, but God has to be compensated for both. So in both cases, you have to believe in Christ, and God got compensated for that, and that compensation plays out to us. All right? And if we refuse him, well, then we're refusing the compensation he got. He wants it to play out to us. This is how God matches up everything. This is why the paradox works, is he takes the bad thing that occurs. Even if you stub your toe and you have a certain damage that occurs. Okay, but God has to see that stubbing of your toe, which is a banal thing to have to look at in the first place. He has to see it forever because he's omniscient. But he has to be compensated for that. And all that compensation runs through Christ. That's what the cross is about. It's an ongoing thing. It started at the cross, that set up the structure, and then it's like this circle that keeps on circling forever, getting ever bigger, because Christ is God-man forever. So it keeps on cycling through his humanity forever.